There are over 100 pyramids in the world. However, the most famous are undoubtedly the ones in Egypt. It's been thousands of years since they were built, but the Great Pyramid of Giza is still the tallest of them all. But how did they build something so great? The Egyptian pyramids have fascinated people for centuries. They have long been associated with ancient aliens and their advanced technology. Some researchers believe that extraterrestrials visited Earth in the distant past and taught primitive humans how to build these massive structures. Others claim that aliens actually built the pyramids themselves, using them as tombs for their dead pharaohs. There is even speculation that one of the pyramids was an alien landing pad. Could there be any truth to these theories? Let's look at some evidence before we continue. Consider subscribing to our channel. The Great Pyramid of Khufu. The most famous pyramid is also the largest, the Great Pyramid of Giza. It stands 481 feet tall and has a base length of 756 feet. The ancient Egyptians built it around 2550 BC as a tomb for Pharaoh Khufu. The structure took about 27 years to complete. According to historians, more than 2 million stone blocks were used in its construction. Each block weighs an average of 2.5 tons, although some weigh as much as 70 tons. During the Middle Ages, the pyramid was known as the Tower of the Moon, which gave rise to many legends. Legend has it that the tower was built by alchemists who wanted to use it to reach the moon. But this is just a myth. In reality, the tower was used as a tomb. In the 19th century, a British engineer named Wayneman Dixon calculated that if the blocks were transported from the nearest quarry, the total distance would be 27 miles. That means the Egyptians would have had to transport each block twice because they would have to go back and forth. But no traces of roads or tracks have ever been found. How then did they transport the giant stones without modern technology? This question alone has given rise to many theories. Erich von Daniken's theory. Famous author Erich von Daniken believes that aliens helped the ancient Egyptians build the pyramids. He bases his argument on the fact that primitive humans could not have built such a structure without outside help. Von Daniken believes that aliens visited Earth in the distant past and taught primitive humans everything they knew. Agriculture, architecture, mathematics, astronomy, and other sciences were all passed on to us by extraterrestrials, according to him. This is known as the ancient astronaut theory. Basically, it says that aliens visited Earth long ago and made contact with humans. They claim that aliens helped primitive humans develop into civilized beings. Some theorists even claim that the gods worshipped by ancient civilizations were actually extraterrestrials. Ancient astronauts supposedly came down from the sky and made contact with primitive humans. They assisted them in building impressive monuments, developing advanced technologies, and forming complex societies. Proponents of this theory often cite examples of structures that are too complex for their time period. For example, proponents of the ancient astronaut theory argue that the Egyptian pyramids could not have been built without the help of aliens. After all, the technology needed to move and lift giant stones simply did not exist at the time. But there is no proof that aliens really helped the Egyptians. On the contrary, archaeologists have found evidence that the Egyptians were able to build the pyramids on their own. They simply don't have the technology to move and lift giant stones. They had ramps, levers, and rollers. These tools are still used today to move heavy objects. Another theory is that the pyramids were built by slaves. Some historians believe that the pharaohs forced thousands of slaves to work on the pyramids. They were made to work in terrible conditions, and many died in the process. This theory is supported by the fact that the pyramids were built during the Old Kingdom period when slavery was common in Egypt. However, there is no direct evidence that slaves built the pyramids. Most historians agree that the pyramids were built by a skilled workforce of masons and laborers. But what do you think? Do you think the pyramids were built by aliens? Let us know in the comments. The Sphinx. While the pyramids are truly amazing, they aren't the only impressive structure in Egypt. The Sphinx is another wonder of the ancient world. It is a hybrid creature with the body of a lion and the head of a human. According to legend, the Sphinx was created by the pharaoh Khafra, who was the son of Khufu. However, this is just a myth. The statue was probably built around 2050 BC. Its exact purpose is unknown, but it may have been a symbol of the pharaoh's power. The Sphinx has been damaged over the centuries. Vandals carved their names into the statue, and treasure hunters dug tunnels beneath it in search of valuable artifacts. But perhaps the greatest damage to the Sphinx was done by wind and rain. These elements eroded the statue's surface, causing it to lose its smooth appearance. Some believe the Sphinx may have looked very different in ancient times and that it may have had a human body instead of a lion's. Others believe that the Sphinx was actually an alien disguised as a lion to protect the entrance to a secret alien base. Many conspiracy theorists believe that the Sphinx was built 10,000 years before the pharaohs and that it has nothing to do with them. How could this be possible? Well, mainstream archaeologists admit that the Sphinx's paws are too small to be a real lion. So why would someone build a statue of a tiny lion? Perhaps it wasn't meant to be a lion at all. Instead, it may have been a sculpture of an alien dressed as a lion to guard the entrance to a secret alien base. There is no archaeological evidence to support this theory. However, it does make sense considering the many mysteries surrounding the Sphinx. Ancient aliens and the Orion correlation. A popular theory about the pyramids is that they are related to the constellation of Orion. This theory is based on the fact that the three pyramids align with the three stars in Orion's belt. But this is just a coincidence. The Egyptians didn't build the pyramids to match the stars in the sky. They chose the shape of the pyramid because it was the most stable. Moreover, the Egyptians weren't stupid. They knew that the earth was round and that there was no such thing as a flat earth. They wouldn't have built the pyramids in such a way as to imply that the earth was flat. Another argument against this theory is that the three pyramids don't line up perfectly with the three stars in Orion's belt. The angle between the second and third pyramid is greater than the angle between the two stars. And finally, the Egyptians weren't the only ones who aligned their structures with the stars. The Inca also built structures that lined up with the stars. Does this mean that the Inca were aliens, or that they had contact with aliens? Of course not. The Egyptians and the Inca simply noticed that the stars in the sky matched the shape of certain land formations. They saw the constellation of Orion and decided to build pyramids to match it. The same is true of the Nazca lines. The Peruvians drew lines on the ground that matched the constellations in the sky. They weren't trying to communicate with aliens. They simply enjoyed astronomy and wanted to learn more about the universe. The Baghdad Battery. An interesting discovery was made by a team of archaeologists in Iraq. They uncovered a collection of clay jars, copper tubes, and iron rods. At first, they thought it was just a collection of old junk. But then they realized that the jars were actually batteries. This was a real technological marvel. The batteries were created around 2,000 years ago. How did the ancient Mesopotamians create batteries? Simple. They filled the clay jars with vinegar and salt water, inserted a copper tube, and connected it to an iron rod. This created a simple electric circuit. By connecting multiple batteries together, the Mesopotamians were able to power machines such as electric motors and light bulbs. How did they do it? One theory is that the ancient Mesopotamians learned how to build batteries from aliens. However, there is no evidence to support this theory. It's more likely that the batteries were discovered by accident. Perhaps the Mesopotamians were just experimenting with different liquids and metals. When they added vinegar and salt water to the mix, they created a battery. Once they realized what they had created, they began making more batteries. They used these batteries for various purposes, including powering weapons and communication devices. Now check out. Did King Tut have an alien space weapon, or have a look at ancient aliens? Evidence for yourself.